Good evening, I'm Yousef Saba. Welcome to another episode of In My Humble Opinion. Joining us tonight are Gabby Richards of the College Democrats and Darian and John Wortman of the College Republicans. Our topic tonight is women's rights in the United States. Our first topic of discussion will be the gender pay gap. Historically, women have received less pay than men in the United States. Census from 2010 shows that women are paid 19% less on average, although this was an improvement from previous years and the figure is thought to have decreased since. This brings us to our first question. Do you believe that there's a substantial problem in America today regarding the gender pay gap? We'll start with Darian.
Yes, so I do not believe that there is a substantial issue with the gender pay gap. I think it's unrefuted. No one on this campus would argue that women should be paid less than men for the same job. The issue that we have lies in the statistic itself, and that it doesn't compare for the person working the same position. It doesn't factor in external things such as taking time off for maternity leave or women holding different jobs.
Okay, John?
Yeah, nobody argues or nobody disagrees that women should be paid the same amount as men. And in any circumstance where you have women being deliberately paid less because of the fact that they're a woman, that has to be stopped. But the blatant thing, the reality of it is that that statistic is a lie. And it's a lie because it doesn't take into account the factors that, as Darian said, women remove themselves from the workforce as often because they choose to have children, they choose to raise families. So the situation that you find yourself in is women, when they go up for promotions or when they go to get raises, they don't have the same amount of time put into the workplace as a male does. And so they're inherently underqualified in that sense that they're not going to receive the same amount of pay. But it's not because they're a woman, it's because you have external economic factors driving that reality.
Okay. Gabby?
I obviously disagree entirely. I think that the issue with this whole statistic debate is that you're looking directly, again, at issues where women come out of the workforce. However, tell me again that men don't take time off in the workforce. For instance, you get injured, you have to have surgery. There are things that happen outside of the workforce that prevent someone from going to work. However, I think that there should be a push for men to also be able to take maternity time so that a woman can go back to work. However, that emphasis on that portion of maternity leave is not at the forefront of where it should be in this modern age. Men should also be able to take maternity leave. Men should be able to share that maternity leave with their wife so that these issues do not continue to happen. However, the statistics that do exist are still comparing wages that are existent today. The fact that women are still paid less than men for the same work
But they're not
is
paid
ridiculous.
less, Gabby, because
Everyone
they're
will
a
get one
woman.
right
It
of
is
reply.
ridiculous.
Everyone got one
Because
right of
they're a
reply.
woman,
But
they're
that's not
still,
why they're being paid less. They're not being paid less
Listen,
because they're deliberately
let
a
me-
woman.
let me
Darian,
finish.
you have the right of reply, please.
Right, so
I
they're
didn't get to finish.
You're not done?
No.
Okay, so you're still answering the question whether you
Yes,
think
there's
it's substantial.
statistics that need to be brought up.
Please, go
The
on.
fact that women are paid 77 cents on the dollar. If you break the woman demographic down and you look at the different races of women that are still paid
65%
less,
African-American.
65%
Please allow her
African-American
to
women
finish.
and 54 cents on the dollar for Latina women. That is not just because these women are taking maternity leave. It's the fact that there is income disparities when it comes to men and women in the workforce. We can't deny that.
Okay, you will. Everyone gets a right of reply. So Darian first, please.
Okay, so to speak with what you said that men are taking time off, we don't disagree with you that men should have, paternity leave to assist their wives in the thing with raising the child. I don't dispute that. I think we should echo European countries in that regard. But like you said, men are taking time off for injury, which is because men are more likely than women to work in these high-risk jobs that in turn pay more, which would account for part of the wage disparity as well.
John?
Well, no, and I would say, and I would just go back to the fact that the statistic is inherently false, and I think that we're right. I think that we should have the opportunity for men to take, because it goes back to it, and that's the problem. They want to have men to have the opportunity for maternity leave because they recognize that the statistic is...
That is not the
yes,
only
it is.
reason why
It's the main
we
reason that
believe
drives that
is
statistic.
absolutely untrue.
And you would eliminate
That's
that problem
biased.
if you
That's
allow...
biased and
it's
naive
not
for you to
Allow her to
believe
finish.
that.
She'll get
Well,
the chance.
Biased
you're
and
ignoring economic reality.
I'm not ignoring economic reality. This is a cultural reality
It's
that needs
not.
to be addressed.
And I think it's
The
a cultural reality that we
discrepancies that
don't let,
exist.
I think we should all work together and fight so men and women are on equal standing when it comes to, as you said, maternity leave. And I think that would help eliminate that pay gap, because the pay gap is not because they're women, it's because as you said, cultural society moves women to stay at home.
Even as Darian brought up, men are more likely to work in these high-risk positions. Do you want to know why? That's because companies are more likely to hire a man for quote-unquote a high-risk position than they are a woman. And you want to know why that exists? It's because of the cultural stereotype that exists in regards to women and men working in the workforce. And it's stupid for us to ignore that when we're discussing the income disparities.
Okay, so we will now turn our direction to discrimination more locally here at Penn State. And so we've seen the rise of sexual assault in recent years, specifically in this past year more than any previous year. And there's also old laws in Pennsylvania, such as the one about brothels. A specific number of women aren't allowed to live in the same house, otherwise it's considered a brothel. So I just want to hear your opinions about the status of women's rights here at Penn State. Darian?
Yeah, so I don't think we would dispute that women definitely do have some marginalization issues on this campus, specifically with sexual assault. I know that there have been active campaigns in recent years to combat this, as well as task force established. So this is something, that we fully support and think that, we need to support women in this regard. Personally, I've never been discriminated against on this campus, but I know that's, not necessarily everyone's view. So this is something I think we actively need to work towards to combat any issues women do feel on this campus.
Okay, John?
No, I'd absolutely echo that, and I would say that with regards to the sexual assault problem, I think that the different organizations who have teamed up with it, Center County Women's Resource Center, UPUA, GPSA, CCSG, and I think Vice President Damon Sims has done a great job heading up that task force. And I know he presented those findings to our Board of Trustees, so I think we're going to see the ball rolling on that, and I know that Penn State has a commitment to be a leader on sexual assault prevention for other schools to take out after our example.
Okay, Gabby?
Like I said earlier, is that there is a cultural issue when it comes to the discrimination, and it's not necessarily that you even know that you're discriminating against a woman for her gender. It's just something that happens naturally, and that is what the root of the problem is. And for instance, one of the walks that just happened on campus, they'll walk a mile in her shoes, where men are wearing heels. What bothers me about that is, why does a man have to wear heels to walk a mile in a woman's shoes? Walk with her in general. Just have a protest. Wearing the heels is another stereotypical item that is associated with women. And I think that by playing into that, as opposed to taking a step back and looking where we as a campus can move forward and make progress, whether it be in regulating what happens when it comes to reporting sexual assaults on campus, what happens when it comes to giving women access to resources to report these sexual assaults, so that there isn't so much of a stereotype when it comes to doing this. I think that that's where the biggest issue is, specifically on this campus.
Okay. You all touched on how the issue can be combated globally, but I'm wondering what you think about how it can be combated on the national level. So what do you think the best way specifically to combat the issue of the gender pay gap is, if you think it's an issue? Gabby?
I think the root of this problem, again, starts with the cultural dynamic of man versus woman when it comes to the thought process in regards to drafting policy and legislation. And I think that moving forward, that there needs to be a push for more and more women to be in the lawmaking bodies of this country. There is not one single woman representative in Congress on behalf of Pennsylvania, when women make up 50% of the population. Everything that that this country has to offer in the lawmaking bodies, or else people are going to be left out when it comes to drafting legislation and really,
there's obviously concerns about it, even if you don't agree it's an issue. How do you think the concerns can be addressed? Darian?
So I think you can kind of address the concerns. Like you said, culturally, sorry. Kind of changing the conversation, so men do see women as equals. So kind of starting from the ground, working our way up. I think women representation in any sort of political field is obviously a positive impact. But to touch back on I don't believe that the wage gap is due to the fact that a woman is inherently a woman. It's not specific. There's external factors that you have to consider.
Okay, John?
Yeah, I would say the same. I think that it's a cultural issue that we need to address. I think allowing men to take maternity leave and giving women the option to go back to work would be a big first step. But I don't think that it's a problem that the federal government can fix by signing a law or passing a bill. I think it's something that you have to let the economic systems that are in place work itself out. Because, I mean, you can pass all the legislation you want, but unless you get to the root of the problem, which is that inherently, due to the society expectation, women are in the workforce less, you're not going to fix the issue.
I have one question that I want to ask them
Sure.
specifically. You talk about how it's an economic issue and the statistics really aren't true. If we were to boil down the statistics to say Wall Street executives, Fortune 500 companies, women only hold CEO positions in 4.8% of Fortune 500 companies. So if you were to look at those incomes and you were to compare them, humor me and tell me that you don't think that there would be a difference between women and men in Wall Street jobs when it comes to the pay gap.
Well, I don't think anyone's denying that there's issues with women not being represented adequately in the workplace. No one's arguing that. I don't think Darian's arguing that, and I don't think myself is arguing that. But I don't think it's something that government can fix. I think it's something that as our culture evolves, as society evolves, as women move into more active roles in government, in business, which is we've already seen. We've seen tremendous progress in that. But what we're saying is that government isn't the be-all, end-all of solving problems. And I think that we're already seeing the push to making these problems go away. But I don't think it's fair to say, because a culture 50 years ago didn't allow women to achieve these things, that for some reason today that the Republican Party is anti-women, or that the Republican, I think
half of those people are still making laws in the Capitol.
Well, and they should vote them out if they have bad ideas. But I don't think you can blame a current generation for past mistakes.
That's not what I'm doing.
Okay, thank you. So we will now move our attention to another topic, which will be the topic of abortion. Federally, abortion remains legal in the first trimester of pregnancy, while on the state level it is severely regulated, and only 87% of counties have an abortion clinic available to them. So this brings us to my first question for you, which is, do you agree with the current legal status of abortions in the United States? Darian?
No, I do not agree with the current legal standings of abortion in the United States. I think it should be abolished. I think it's a terrible practice. It's infanticide, and I don't agree with it. No.
John?
Yeah, and I would say I think Roe versus Wade is one of the worst Supreme Court decisions in American history, and I think someday it will be overruled because it's a terrible precedent. If you look at what happened, you had 31 states. Because I believe in democracy. I believe that the American people, unless something is stated in the Constitution, the American people should make their minds up about these difficult issues. And at the time of Roe versus Wade, 31 states had abortion either restricted or banned entirely. And 7 justices, for no other reason than they thought that something was written into the Constitution, even though abortion is never mentioned once in the Constitution, unilaterally upended 31 state laws restricting or banning abortion. And I think that those decisions should be left to the people. I think that I think it's over 40, I think it's 43% of women are opposed to abortion. So I get sick and tired when the Democratic Party says that Republicans are anti-women because they don't believe in abortion, when almost half of the women in this country don't believe in abortion. And I think that I'm excited with the 70% of America believed in upholding the Partial Birth Abortion Act, which the Supreme Court upheld in Gonzalez versus Carhart. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I think someday, it's not even a religious issue, it's a scientific issue. The bottom line is that you cannot get to a human life without the minute of conception happening. And once that discussion continues, then I think that we'll move to the right direction in this country.
Okay, so Gabby, do you agree with the current legal status of abortions in the United States?
I do not agree. I think that this issue, becoming a wedge issue in politics, has definitely hindered the safety and the health of women when it comes to the resources that are available to them, when it comes to determining whether or not abortion is the option for them, adoption, what have you. It should never be a government's decision to determine whether or not a woman should have access to an abortion, if that is something that she wants. I think it is a woman's right. It is a woman's right to choose. And as soon as the government starts stepping in, whether it be the state government or the federal government telling a woman, hindering that decision, we have crossed the line. As Ruth Bader Ginsburg said in her Hobby Lobby case, we are entering into a minefield. And I believe that to its utter core. And that is another Supreme Court decision that is setting a dangerous precedent. It is allowing companies to determine whether or not contraception should be something that their employees are able to access via their health insurance benefits. So no, I do not agree with the current state of abortion rhetoric, specifically in this country, because women deserve to have the resources to have safe abortions, regardless of the party politics of their state.
Okay.
Do you mind if I ask Gabby a question?
Yeah,
okay.
sure.
So Gabby, my question would be, I think we talked about earlier in our discussions, we think men and women should be treated the same with regard to maternity leave. And I think that everyone can agree that men and women should be treated the same equally under the law, and that we shouldn't hold someone to a different standard because they're a different gender.
I think
so
that's where you're going with this.
My question would be, why does a man, because inherently men cannot get pregnant, that's just by nature, why does a man have any less legal right to the say of his or her child, his child, when it's in the womb than a woman does?
Because it is not your body. And
but
let me ask
if you
you
want
this.
men and women to be treated
ask
equally
you
under
this.
the law, how can you have a different standard? It's both their children, is it not?
Is it a woman's choice to have a man have a vasectomy? Is that something that we're allowed to decide? Is that something that we have a legality over? Absolutely not.
But
that is your reproductive right.
There's a difference
that is
between
your
a man's
reproductive
testicles
right.
and a live child.
It's still, you brought it up, that they're the moment of conception. It takes two people, two separate bodies to conceive a child.
And
so at the end of the
they should
day,
be treated the same under law, should they not?
you would never allow a woman to determine whether or not you should be able to have a vasectomy or not.
No, and I don't think men should ever be able to tell a woman whether she has her tubes tied or has her ovaries removed.
Okay, so if you agree
but the bottom
on that,
line is
it's
both
still my
our
body.
child.
It is still my body.
It's both
Are you
the man
carrying
and the
baby?
woman. I can't carry a
I'm sorry, I have
child
to cut you
by
off.
design.
Excuse me, this debate is obviously not going to be resolved, so I'll move to the next question. What do you think the restrictions for abortions should be in the United States? But please answer that when we return after the break. Thank you. Welcome back. So before the break, I asked, what do you think the restrictions for abortions should be? So we'll start with Darian, if you even believe there should be restrictions.
Yep, so I take the stance that there should not be restrictions. I think that we should completely abolish abortion. I think it's a barbaric practice and no restrictions necessary for something that shouldn't even be put in place.
Okay, John?
Yeah, I feel the same way, but if we do go the path of trying to start implementing restrictions, because I think it's going to be a process that takes over time, I think immediately we need to start at a 20-week ban. After 20 weeks, you can no longer get an abortion. At that point, it's been proven that when babies, if they have to have in utero surgery, that they can feel pain, they have to be given anesthesia at that time. I also think, I'm very glad that the partial birth abortion ban was upheld. And I think that goes back to the question, maybe Gabby can address it when she goes to talk about what she thinks is a restriction. At what point does people on the left think that the child deserves rights? Because in the mind of many people in the Democratic Party, as long as everything, you could have the whole child out of the womb except the head, and they still think it's acceptable to be killed, even though you have a 9-pound baby that's almost entirely out of the womb. So I think at what point, if any, does the Democratic Party believe that that a child is a child?
Gabby?
Well, to address that, the fact that you have to say the Democratic Party when discussing abortion rights leads me to my biggest gripe with this issue, is that we are making abortion a political issue. We are making abortion a wedge issue in party politics. And at the end of the day, there are Republican women who get abortions. There are Democratic women, independent women, people who don't believe government should exist, who get abortions every day because it is something that we should have access to as women. It is something that should be done in a safe and effective manner. And my biggest problem with the Republican Party is they make an effort to close abortion clinics where women could then be presented with educational resources, educational tools to tell them, yes, this is what we are able to provide to you. This is what will happen if we were to carry out this procedure at X weeks, at this month period, at this trimester. And because these clinics do not exist, because these clinics are dwindling, that is where my biggest issue is that there is not enough education surrounding this issue. So no, at the moment, I don't think that we have enough
But do you believe that there should be restrictions on abortions?
Personally, I don't believe that a baby, when it's in the final stages and a woman could give birth to it, should be able to be aborted. I don't believe that when you're in the third trimester, the last leg of the third trimester, But again, this goes back to my issue, is that if women were presented with the correct educational tools when it comes to their options post-childbirth, if they were given the necessary options in education to determine whether or not they themselves can keep a child or they can give it up for adoption, that comes with having these pregnancy resource centers. That comes with having clinics like Planned Parenthood. And we unfortunately are seeing those go by the wayside. And so right now, my personal belief is a woman should be able to have an abortion as long as she feels as though it's necessary. Again, it's a woman's right. If she does not have a problem with having this procedure at X amount of weeks, again, it's her decision.
Okay. What do you think the best way to address the issue is at this current time? Darian?
The best way to address abortion as an issue?
Yeah, it's obviously a very divisive issue in society, so what do you think can be done about it?
Yeah, so I definitely think it's a difficult issue to tackle just because it is so polarizing. You know, it kind of seems like Democrats versus Republicans on this issue, but, you know, there are people in between. So I think it's kind of a sensitive and difficult issue to tackle moving forward, but, you know, gathering all the resources to make informed decisions. But, I mean, like I've told you before, I take the stance that I think abortion should be abolished, so.
Okay, John?
Well, no, and that kind of gets back to why I get sick and tired of my Democratic friend painting Republicans as extremists because they're closing abortion clinics. And you still didn't answer my question. At what point is a child in the womb entitled to the rights of a human being? Because if you kill a pregnant mother, you're going to get charged with double homicide. If you have an in utero surgery on a baby 20 weeks or later, you have to give anesthesia. So at what point does the Democratic Party want to stop its extremists? Do you think that what Dr. Gosnell did in Philadelphia and was tried and sentenced to prison for should be legal? Because many people on the left think that that's okay. Barack Obama voted 4 times in the Illinois Senate to allow infanticide, to kill children after they're out of the womb. So at what point does that stop? And I think the way to fix it is I think we need a constitutional amendment passed by the states that defines life beginning at conception.
Gabby?
Again, that's my biggest issue is life. When you bridge that gap, when you draw that line of when a woman, because at the end of the day, what that line is being drawn is whether or not a woman has rights to the
but
uterus.
When does the
has
child
rights.
have rights?
But
that's what I'm asking
okay,
you.
and I'm going to get to that. My personal beliefs, again, your personal beliefs, are not necessarily the entire beliefs of your party. So whether or not we're representing our party, whether or not we're representing our personal beliefs, that is still left up to debate when it comes to these discussions that we have here. My biggest concern, my biggest issue with this is as soon as you put it in law, as soon as there is a constitutional amendment determining when a woman's rights to her body end, that is a slippery slope. And if that happens with the start of conception, that means that a rapist, that means that someone who was sexually assaulted loses the rights to determine whether or not she should be responsible for having a child that, 1, she didn't even want, 2, shouldn't have had to make the decision in the first place. And that's my biggest problem, is that as soon as that line is drawn, you're worrying more so about the fetus than opposed to the woman who is, 1, responsible for carrying the child, 2, has more responsibility than a man when it comes to taking care of that child if that man leaves her after the baby is born. And those are the issues. That is another cultural and social issue as opposed to politics. And the fact that we believe that my body, your body, her body, and everyone else who's here should be given a legality when it comes to the law, specifically when it comes to abortion, that is allowing politics to determine what is right for me, specifically when it comes to medicine, when it comes to an issue like abortion.
If I could just rebut that, This is typical Democratic scare tactics.
Here we go.
Only 3%, and I think that we can all agree that in those circumstances, rape, incest, life of the mother, abortion should be allowed for those people that have that happen to them. But that is 3% of abortions that happen in this country. 97% of abortion is used as a form of birth control. It's used because they either don't want the child or they decide that they don't after they consensually chose to have sex knowing that the consequence could be a child. And I think that that's what's unfair. That's unfair to the child because that child you knew going into it that there could be that option, and I don't think it's fair to punish an innocent human life. And you still won't answer my question.
Because I'm going to get to it now.
Okay.
Now that you brought this up.
When
now that you brought
life
this up.
begins. But you, the Democratic Party,
we're actually going to move on
when
with this.
A child has
That's
rights.
Not, I have to rebut
Sure,
this.
go ahead.
Listen, if you want to walk down this slope, if you want to talk about this, let's understand the fact that whether or not these statistics, where you're getting these from.
Well, just same place you get yours. The famous British Prime Minister said that there's lies, there's terrible lies, and then there's statistics. So you can just take what you want with that.
Let me lay this out for you. If you were saying, we'll go off of your statistic, that 3% of abortions, accounted for abortions, happen because of sexual assault, happen because of X, Y, and Z. If we start making this laundry list of when it is acceptable, and you believe that it's acceptable, it should not matter.
It's not me.
It's
the democratic process should decide.
We,
as the people, should decide. And I think the vast majority of America agrees that those exceptions should be allowed. But I also think the vast majority of America doesn't want abortion on demand.
It's because the Republican Party has a clouded judgment when it comes to abortion being used as preventative medicine. When it comes to being used.
And you won't define when a life begins.
Because you are not the end-all, be-all of telling me when a life begins.
I'm not saying I am, but we as a country have to decide that. I'm asking you what your opinion is, and you won't answer my question.
Because this is the slippery slope. Because as soon as I tell you, then I'm deciding, then I'm giving you full reign over my body to tell me when it is okay for me to have an abortion.
So do you think a child should be allowed to be killed after coming out of the womb?
That I don't agree with, but that's not abortion.
There's people in the Democratic Party
but that doesn't mean that it's me. That doesn't mean that it's me.
Which is why I'm asking you to define it.
It's not my responsibility.
I think what Gabby said earlier. I think from what Gabby said earlier, it's clear that she believes the woman should be able to decide whether it's okay for her to have an abortion or not.
Not you, not her, not
but
anyone
else. Moving on, related to this discussion that we've been having, you touched on birth control. So obviously that's also a major issue related to abortion. So I want each of you to tell me whether you believe birth control should be provided by public health care. Darian?
Yeah, so I'm kind of touching on both issues. I personally don't have any objections with taxpayer dollars and federal funding to Planned Parenthood for issues pertaining to birth control. I think that giving access to low-income families birth control in turn lowers the abortion rate, and it provides these people access to services that otherwise they might not have. So I have no objections with that. But where my, I guess, objection does come up is the funding. How do you allocate what is to abortion, what is to birth control? So that's where I kind of have issues with this.
Okay, John?
Personally, I do not believe the government has the right to spend taxpayer money on birth control because there are numerous people who have religious objections to it. It's the same reason that I hope that the young lady who's before the Supreme Court right now in Abercrombie & Fitch versus EEOC wins, because I think that religious liberty in the United States needs to be protected regardless of your faith, regardless of your background. And I think that we get into a really slippery slope when the government can look at individuals and say, well, I know that you hold this religious belief, but we really don't care. We're going to violate it anyway. I think that that's a very dangerous slope for why our country was founded in the first place. Our country, the majority of the reason why people came over is because they were being persecuted in England and in other countries in Europe for practicing what they believed in.
Gabby?
My biggest issue, specifically when it comes to the availability and the access to affordable birth control methods, is stemming directly from what you said, is you support Planned Parenthood and organizations like that who provide this access. However, there are people in your party, like we keep talking about, who believe that Planned Parenthood is an organization and a company that shouldn't exist because they provide that information, because they provide those resources. If more and more women have access to affordable birth control that is covered by their health insurance benefits that are given to them by a company, regardless if that company is Christian, Muslim, what have you. The religious disparity when it comes to healthcare, that is my biggest issue when it comes to religious freedom, is that you can have people in any given company that practice varying religions. However, the religion of the owner or the creator of that company should not have any effect on me as an employee, whether or not I practice that religion or whether or not I believe that I should have access to affordable birth control on the insurance that I am given through my employer. And that's my biggest issue.
Do you have to work for that company?
you could work. Think about this.
Hobby Lobby was correctly decided, and it was the right decision.
Hobby Lobby was set a dangerous precedent because Hobby Lobby is a company that has 500 different locations.
But you don't have to work there. They don't have to work there. If they want an insurance company that provides them birth control, they can work somewhere else.
Think about this for a minute. Why should someone be forced to find a different job, a job that they had for a while, and then this Hobby Lobby decision comes around, and the company is then told that they do not have to provide access to affordable birth control to their workers? Why should that person then be forced to not only leave a position, because they're going to leave, they're not going to be fired, so they don't have the ability to then be compensated for no longer having a job. They're going to have to go and find something else. That should not be on the shoulders of the employee simply because of the religious beliefs of the person who owns that company. I'm sorry, that's my biggest issue with this entire debate.
So obviously that was actually my next question, whether you believe employers should provide their employees with birth control. You obviously do, and you obviously do not, correct?
Well, can I?
Yeah, you can each answer the question.
It's not that the company is providing them with birth control. It's not that the company has dispensaries in the lobby where a woman can buy birth control. It's allowing the health insurance that is provided by that company to then cover the purchase of birth control if that woman so chooses. Again.
But who's paying for the insurance? The person who owns the company.
Again, but this is where religion is coming into play.
But this is where the government is intruding on my religious rights and my religious liberty.
Also
I should
where
not
the
have to shut my business down to
not
violate my religious conscience.
This is also where religion needs to take a back seat when it comes to health decisions.
Do you think the government should have the right to tell, say, a Jewish deli that they have to serve things that are non-kosher?
I think that the government, first of all,
do you think that's fair?
Deli meats and my health are varying different issues.
You won't answer any question.
No,
Every question I've asked you,
because
you refuse
the
to answer.
questions that you're
because
asking
your logic makes no
are
sense.
Absolutely ridiculous. You mean to tell me that we should have the same debate that's merited the same amount of discussion?
The government could do the same thing.
The government, listen. The government should not have the ability.
Do you think that Muslim girls should be? What if the government passed a law that said that Muslim women had to remove their headscarves in public schools? Do you think they have the right to do that?
The government is not going to do that.
They could, under your logic.
No, no.
Where's the line drawn?
No. Let me explain here for a minute. The government would first of all,
you say that they would never.
Your religious liberty, your religious freedoms that we have been given and granted by the Constitution do not mean that you should turn a blind eye to the issues that come up from the religious beliefs. Like you said, your religious beliefs are something that you have in your inner core. It's something that you believe in. However, the actions that occur because of those religious beliefs, because of what is deeply rooted in a religious belief, like believing that abortion shouldn't happen, abortion should be illegal, or that we as a company shouldn't be able to give our employees access to this type of birth control, is rooted in a religious belief. You are then hindering other people who do not believe what you believe. That is my biggest issue. Right. That is the line.
But as the business owner, don't I have the right to make that decision? Why would I have to go against my morals to...
Again, this is where the issue is. It's your morals.
So I own the company.
So then, this is my problem. So now so if we're going to follow your logic, since we're discussing how mine is so terribly displaced, then will it be okay for you to not hire someone simply because they don't practice the same religion as you? Because it's your company?
There's a difference between...
No, there is no difference. That is the line that you are trying to draw.
You're trying to draw a line.
No,
discrimination on any form is not acceptable. But what you're trying to say is that someone has to violate a religious held belief. That person's not discriminating against a human being.
No,
They're discriminating against government.
This is discrimination. This is discrimination that is fueled by religious beliefs. And we can't ignore that.
But where do you draw the line? You still want to answer my question.
Where I draw the line of where religion should be a factor?
Someone is a Catholic or a Muslim who doesn't believe in contraception. They can have that belief.
You want me to answer your questions, but you keep interrupting me.
I'm asking you that you think it's okay that the government forces them in those situations to violate their conscience, but you don't think it's okay.
I would never support the government telling someone that they are not allowed to wear a hijab in public simply because it is frowned upon by the school or the people who run the school that they're attending.
But the hijab to the Muslim girl is the same as as someone who's Muslim or Catholic not believing in contraception. It's the same belief that they hold.
Again, this is an issue.
You're imposing your moral justification as a government on people and their individual beliefs.
Okay, I have to interject here because this obviously isn't going to go anywhere again. So we'll actually move to the next topic, which will be the representation in government. Obviously, historically, women have been underrepresented in American government. No woman has ever been president or even vice president, and we've only ever seen 2 vice presidential candidates win the primaries. So America is one of very few democracies in the world that has never had a female head of state. Do you find this shameful, as it is supposed to be the world's best democracy? Darian?
Yeah, so there's no refuting that women are definitely underrepresented in government, and I think this is something that we should push towards, for more women to represent government so people feel that their voice can be heard as a woman. So in some regard, yes, it is shameful, but at the same time, these women aren't being put in place, they're elected to their position, so.
Okay. Do you think the United States government should I'm sorry, I didn't give you each a chance, John.
No, that's okay. I think we absolutely need more women in government. I think now in our current Congress we have the most that's ever been there, and I think that's awesome. I'd love to see a woman as head of state. I just hope it's not Hillary Clinton. I think 30 years ago Britain did the best thing that's happened to the West in a very long time. Maggie Thatcher. She was a real treat. She was a prize, and I think she's one of the greatest rulers that we've had of any state in the past 100 years. So we'll let Hillary Clinton walk in her footsteps a little bit longer.
Gabby?
I obviously have a different opinion in regards to Hillary Clinton, but I think that there is a huge discrepancy between the representation of women and minorities, even in Congress and the lawmaking bodies of this country, is that we're not going to see real progress made when it comes to this equality that we continue to discuss and that we still feel is a warranted and relevant discussion until more and more people whom this equality is affecting are represented in the lawmaking bodies of this country. Like I said before, Pennsylvania doesn't have a single woman representative in Congress. Moreover than that, the fact that it is still acceptable for a presidential candidate, regardless if you like her or not, with the experience that Hillary Clinton has, to still be asked questions of, oh, well, what suit are you wearing? I would never ask John that. It would never be acceptable.
Clinton's ever accomplished.
Oh my God.
Okay. Do you think the United States government should mandate, for example, Darian?
No, absolutely not. I think that's a great overstep of the government to mandate something like that. I mean, that kind of ties into affirmative action, and I don't think that government has any place in mandating anything like that. I think a position should be elected, and they should have no say-so in matters like that.
Okay, John?
What she said.
Okay, Gabby?
I actually do not have that much of a varying opinion on quotas. I think that, but my opinion is not simply because of a numerical value or like putting, that we need to have X amount of women here. That detracts from the value that a woman can bring to the table. That detracts from leveling the playing field as opposed and being taken seriously as a woman, but rather as a person. Again, I'm sick and tired of it constantly being this, oh, well, she's a woman, or, well, he's a man. We're both people. We probably have the same experience level. Let's talk about the issues, let the people decide. And I'm ready for the words first, president and woman to no longer be used in a sentence. Whether you agree that Hillary Clinton is that woman to receive that ability to kind of break that glass ceiling is up for debate, obviously, but it's the 21st century. It baffles me that we haven't had that success in that area yet.
That actually brings me to my next question, which is, what do you think of Hillary Clinton running for president? Darian?
Well, obviously, I am very opposed to Hillary Clinton running for president. I think the Republican Party has a lot of great candidates that we fully support moving forward. I think one of the benefits of the Republican Party is we do have a variety of, very strong contenders for the upcoming election, whereas the Democratic Party kind of, so to speak, puts a lot of eggs in one basket, which they're doing with Hillary Clinton. So, no, I would not support her.
This will actually be the last question, so would you please add a closing statement at the end of your answer to it? Starting with Darian, you will each answer the question, then provide a closing statement, a general closing statement, please.
Okay, would you like me to?
No, I just want you to tell me what do you think
we're just
that...
going to interject here. All right, that's fine. Tell you what, we're cutting the last question. We're just going to do closing statements.
But I really wanted to say why Hillary was great.
You can say it in your closing.
Okay, I'll loop it in.
We're like way over time.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to cut this down later in post.
Yeah.
But that's why we have editing.
Okay, so just closing statements. Okay, so I'm just going to ask you in general, what do you think of the status of women's rights in America? That's what I'm going to ask, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so I'd now like to ask for a closing statement from each of you. In general, what do you think of the status of women's rights in America? Darian.
Yep, so I would say that the status of women's rights in America are definitely improving. We're making great strides towards that. I think if we keep kind of focusing on the historical discrepancies women have had, then we won't be able to move forward and make these initiatives. But I think that they are definitely improving, and women are being seen as a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think it's amazing how far we've come. I think it's amazing the accomplishments that have already happened. And you can see that shining city on a hill every day, and America keeps getting closer and closer, and we'll get there someday, but not quite.
Gabby?
I think that what bothers me the most is the fact that we still need to have 45 minutes dedicated to talking about gender inequality and the issues that women face on a daily basis, whether it be in their doctor's offices, whether it be in schools, and whether it be in the Capitol, is that women are underrepresented. Women are not viewed as equal as often as they should be, and that is an inherent problem. And it's not one that is just faced by Hillary Clinton running for president. It's one that's faced by you and me and the other women here in this room, and you as well. The fact that men and women are not viewed as equal is not just something that's hindering toward women, but hindering toward everyone. And it's something that we need to move toward. And I think we're getting there, and I definitely believe that electing Hillary Clinton as president is a step in the direction of really solidifying that road toward complete equality when it comes to men and women in this country.
Well, that's all we have time for tonight. Thank you to our guests, Gabby Richards, Darian Gist, and John Wortman, and thank you all for watching. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at PSN News. Good night.